Hello, darlings. Welcome to GloomWhispers, our dark corner of the internet where shadows dance and whispers echo. I'm Gloomy, your host for all things eerie and mysterious. Leave a comment and hit subscribe and the bell for more haunting tales that will leave you enthralled and unsettled. Haunted Honeymoon. When Emily and David decided to get married, the idea of a honeymoon cruise seemed perfect. David loved the sea, and Emily, eager to confront her lifelong fear of water, agreed. Despite her anxiety, she trusted David's assurance that the cruise would be a relaxing adventure. Yet, as the date approached, her dread grew. The day of departure was bright and sunny. The ship, a massive floating city, gleamed under the sky. Emily's stomach churned with apprehension as they boarded, her smile tight but determined. David, full of excitement, guided her through the grand hallways, pointing out amenities and activities. The first night on the ship was uneventful. They dined in an opulent restaurant, where David chatted about their plans while Emily tried to suppress her nervous glances at the windows, framing the vast, dark ocean. Later, they stood on their private balcony, the moon casting a silvery glow over the undulating waves. David held her close, reassuring her that everything would be fine. But as night fell, Emily's sleep was restless. She dreamed of dark waters, of drowning and being pulled into the depths by unseen forces. She woke up in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. David slept soundly beside her, oblivious to her unease. She shook off the nightmare and tried to convince herself it was just her nerves. The next day, they explored the ship. Emily forced herself to relax, joining David in activities and even managing to laugh at his antics. They found a beautiful lounge at the ship's bow, where they enjoyed cocktails and watched the sunset. For a moment, Emily's fears seemed distant. That night, however, the nightmare returned. This time, it was more vivid. She was on the deck, alone, when the ship seemed to vanish, leaving her floating in the endless sea. Dark shapes moved beneath the surface, whispering her name, and she felt cold, slimy hands pulling her down. She woke up screaming, startling David awake. "It's just a dream, Em," he said, holding her close. "You're safe with me." But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The ship, which had seemed so grand and inviting, now felt oppressive and sinister. As they wandered the corridors, she noticed subtle changes. The lights flickered, and strange, almost imperceptible sounds echoed through the halls. She tried to tell David, but he brushed it off as her imagination. On the third night, things took a darker turn. They attended a formal dinner where Emily found herself seated next to an elderly woman with piercing blue eyes. The woman stared at her, unblinking, and leaned in to whisper, "The sea knows your fear. It will claim you." Emily recoiled, but when she looked again, the woman was gone, her seat empty. She turned to David, but he hadn't noticed anything. Panic clawed at her, and she excused herself, rushing to their cabin. David followed, concerned. "Emily, what's wrong?" She tried to explain, but her words came out jumbled, her fear overwhelming. David, though worried, insisted it was just stress and fatigue. He suggested they rest and take it easy the next day. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring out at the moonlit ocean. Her reflection in the glass seemed to shift, her eyes dark and hollow. She blinked and it was gone, but the unease remained. She turned away, deciding to lie down, when she heard a soft, melodic humming. She followed the sound through the dimly lit hallways. It led her to the pool area, eerily deserted at this hour. The water was dark, almost black, and the humming grew louder. She approached, drawn by an unseen force. Suddenly, a hand shot out of the water, grasping her ankle. She screamed, pulling away and stumbling back. The hand disappeared, leaving only ripples in the water. Heart pounding, she ran back to the cabin, where David found her huddled in a corner, trembling. "Emily, you're scaring me. What happened?" She could only shake her head, unable to articulate the terror she felt. David held her until she calmed down, but sleep eluded her. She spent the rest of the night staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The following day, Emily refused to leave the cabin. David, frustrated but trying to be supportive, brought her meals and stayed with her, reading aloud to distract her. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of her vision, and the ship's creaks and groans sounded like whispers. That evening, David convinced her to join him for a walk on the deck. The air was cool and the sea was calm, but Emily's anxiety was palpable. They walked in silence, David holding her hand reassuringly. As they reached the ship's stern, Emily froze. The elderly woman from the dinner stood there, staring out at the sea. She turned to Emily, her eyes gleaming in the moonlight. "It's almost time," she said. David saw her this time, his face going pale. "Who are you? What do you want?" The woman smiled, a chilling expression. "The sea never forgets. It knows her fear. It will take her, as it has taken so many before." Emily was filled with a cold dread. "David, let's go," she said, pulling him away. They hurried back to their cabin, but the sense of impending doom was overwhelming. David locked the door, trying to comfort Emily, but she could see the fear in his eyes now. They sat together, the tension thick between them. The ship seemed to groan louder, the lights flickering more intensely. Suddenly the room grew unbearably cold. A thick fog seeped through the cracks of the door. Swirling around them, the humming returned, louder and more menacing. "Emily, stay close to me," David said, his voice shaking. The fog coalesced into a shape, a spectral figure of the elderly woman. She floated towards them, her eyes dark voids. "The sea has come for you, Emily," she said. Emily screamed, but no sound came out. She clung to David, feeling his heart race against hers. The figure reached out, her cold fingers brushing Emily's cheek. Instantly, memories flooded her mind. Drowning in dark waters, being pulled under by invisible forces, the crushing weight of the ocean above. David tried to pull Emily away, but the figure's grip was like iron. "You cannot escape your fate," she whispered. In a final act of desperation, Emily shouted, "Leave us alone." The figure paused, her eyes narrowing. For a moment, the ship seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a final piercing scream, the figure dissolved into the fog, which dissipated into the air. The temperature returned to normal and the lights stabilized. Emily and David sat in stunned silence, the ordeal leaving them shaken to the core. The rest of the night passed in a blur of fear and exhaustion. As dawn broke, the ship's intercom crackled to life, announcing an emergency stop at a nearby port. Passengers were advised to disembark due to unforeseen technical issues. David and Emily didn't need to be told twice. They gathered their belongings and joined the throng of passengers leaving the ship. As they stepped onto solid ground, Emily felt a weight lift from her chest. They found a small hotel in the port town, where they tried to process what had happened. David held Emily close, his voice gentle but firm. "We're safe now. It's over." But Emily knew the sea's call would never truly leave her. The memory of the spectral figure, the chilling whispers, and the dark, endless waters would haunt her forever. As they prepared to return home, Emily made a silent vow. She would never set foot on a ship again. The sea, with its unfathomable depths and ancient secrets, had shown her its true face, and she knew she would never forget. Thank you for joining me on this eerie adventure. Please subscribe, hit the like button, and click the bell icon to be notified whenever I upload a new scary tale. Check out my other videos and follow me on social media for even more soft-spoken content. See you soon for another enthralling and unsettling tale. Stay spooky, darlings.